So my boy Meech over at Saint channel, he tagged me and quite a few other creators in a tag video. Basically, he was like, rep your city. So I'm gonna rep my cities. I'll explain what that means. Be back after the intro. All right, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, and you are watching Smell Goods. I do appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit as we walk through, talk through, discuss more of the fragrances that I have in my collection, but more importantly, as I'm documenting my fragrance journey, helping you in your fragrance journey as well, and helping you hopefully stay safe, stay sane, and stay smelling good. If this is your first time here, definitely appreciate you stopping through. Don't let it be the last time the algorithm did its job this time, but we can't always count on it. So make sure that you are subscribed by hitting that like, hitting that subscribe, and then requesting notifications. That way, every time I drop a new video, you get that information and you can come check out the new content, which is pretty often, right? And then for those that have been here before, what's up? Good to see the Smell Good Squad back in the building again. Appreciate you dropping back through. All right. So as mentioned, my guy Meech over at the Saint channel, he did a video. He was actually tagged, and so he was like, I'm going to continue this, and he's going to tag some other people, and so we'll do that as well. And so the tag was basically rep your city. Talk about your city and the fragrances that might represent or speak to your city. So we're going to do that. We're going to, because in the back of my head right now, I'm hearing put on for my city. I put on for my city. I got a couple of cities to represent, right? So my story is I grew up in the city of Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, but I've lived a few other places. I lived in Atlanta for a few years while I went to school. I lived in DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Shout out to the PG County area. I lived in Tulsa twice. Yeah, I went back there for a reason. All right. And then now I'm in Phoenix. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to try and do something for each of those places. I am definitely going to do primarily Chicago because that's where I grew up. That's the birthplace of Kevin and evidently Smell Goods. But it's a place that has a lot of things going on as far as its history, what have you. And then I'll give some honorable mentions as far as other cities that I've lived in. I'll just, spoiler alert, I really didn't think of anything for Tulsa. Shout out to all my Tulsa people. I'm just saying. All right. So let's just kind of go through it and we'll talk through it and we'll run through this. All right. So the city of Chicago's an interesting place, right? Chicago has a rich history. Chicago is, I think it's still the third largest city or the third most populous city. We hear all of the horror stories about Chicago, but Chicago, for me, was a great place to grow up. It was a great place to be. I tell folks I was born on the west side, raised on the south side, went to school on the north side, and then my family moved out to the western suburbs when I was like in high school. But even that suburbs don't mean the same thing that they mean in other areas. Let me just say that. So when we talk about Chicago, one of the things that, of course, it has in its history, and one of the reasons it has the bad reputation that, is all, put out. And I've got my own theories as far as why some of those things are happening. But Chicago has there's a gang culture there, right? There's a gang life there, what have you. But it's not just on one side because Chicago was a mafia city as well. Chicago was a city where, Al Capone, that's a Chicago thing, right? We talk about there's even a tour that I know they used to do. I don't know if they still do it, where they would like take you around to like famous places where people got murdered in gangland mafia hits, right? In fact, my school, if I remember correctly, my high school was near one of what they call, I think, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where it was some stuff, right? So with that in mind, I think it's only fitting, only apropos that we talk about this fragrance that is aptly named Mafia, right? From the street scent Dubai. This newer in the collection. In fact, I know I did a review on it very recently, but this is, tobacco, leather, vanilla, incense. Yeah, this is a bossed up type of fragrance. This is a fragrance that would be at home not with the not with the underling in the organization. This is what the Godfather would wear. This is what the big boss would wear, right? This is that type of a fragrance. So when we're talking about Chicago, you can't talk about Chicago without talking about gang slash mafia life. So we've got a fragrance for that, and we're talking, of course, we said mafia from the street scent Dubai. All right. The next thing about Chicago, Chicago has a fairly rich music culture, right? Chicago, admittedly, was a little late to the hip hop thing. Why do I sound like that, right? A little late to hip hop, but that's because we were housing it up, right? We had house music, not techno. We had house music, right? And house music kind of actually came out of that disco era, and house was like the thing, right? And if I had a full bottle, I'd show, and I definitely give credit to Zernell Gilly for his entire line, really, that kind of covers some things, but he's got a fragrance in there called House, right? But one of the other music styles that is really strong in Chicago is its jazz culture. It's jazz. They have a jazz fest. I know the church that I grew up pastor, her brother was Ramsey Lewis, so very world-renowned jazz pianist, what have you. And so Chicago has a strong, among other things, I mean, there's a strong gospel culture, gospel music culture. There's a strong blues culture there, right? Chicago's a music city that may not get full credit as being a music city, but Chicago is on point with its music, right? Shout out to all the great artists that came out of Chicago. If we're going to talk about jazz, then the fragrance that kind of sticks to my mind, of course, is from Fragrance World. This is Notes Jazz. Notes Jazz, and this is their take on Silky Woods. This is a little Silky Woods by Goldfield and Banks. This is a little sweeter than the Silky Woods as far as the OG. This does not have, the woods are not as prevalent in this as it is in the Silky Woods. And so, but if we're talking about that jazz, definitely got to use the one they call jazz, right? This does feel, and also the great thing about this is that this is perfect for winter, which the other thing is Chicago has winter. Yes, Chicago has winter. I'm so traumatized by the winters in Chicago of growing up that I am now allergic to snow. I don't deal with snow. I don't, if snow is on the forecast, I'm catching a flight out of the city. I don't do snow. All right. But yes, again, as far as a fragrance for Chicago in their jazz culture, we're going to go with Notes Jazz. Notes Jazz. All right. The next thing that we'll talk about as far as Chicago also is, of course, Chicago has a lakefront, right? I can remember growing up, we would sometimes go down to the lakefront. I think it was like the 31st Street lakefront beach, what have you. Now, don't think like tropical, nice beach. We're talking beach, right? So you have the beaches there, but then there's also a river. There's two rivers actually that flow through Chicago. There's the Chicago River and there's the Illinois River. And, when it comes to like the St. Patrick's Day, which there's a huge Irish culture in Chicago as well. When there's the St. Patrick's Day, they actually dye the river green, right? So the river turns this, it's like crazy. They dump it, like I think it's an orange dye or orange powder or whatever into the river, and it turns the river like this, like really bright green. I say all that to say this, that Chicago's water, as far as beach, as far as the rivers, all of that, it's a strong smell, right? It's not just an aquatic smell. There's a strong smell. Not saying that is totally unpleasant, but it's also not necessarily your typical water smell that you might smell in a city, right? So when I'm thinking about strong aquatic smells, there's nothing else I could talk about that would kind of remind me of the Chicago River, Illinois River system and the beach system in Chicago, because this is a strong aquatic smell. I am talking about from Lattafa, and this one is Atlas. This is, you've heard me discuss it, this is beast mode 101. This is like, I'm not spraying it. because I don't want to smell this in my house for the next 2 days or 3 days, right? Good fragrance. This is its take on Megamare by Waterways. Great smelling fragrance. This is just strong. This is just a strong aquatic smell. So when I'm thinking about the river systems in Chicago, we're going to, of course, bring up Atlas from Latafa. All right, let that focus there. All right. And then the other thing that Chicago's known for the place where the greatest basketball player of all time played. Yes, I'm talking about a young fellow by the name of Michael Jeffrey Jordan. He is the greatest person to ever pick up a basketball and play. Say what you want to, argue with your mama or argue with your mama's baby little cousin, whatever you want to do. He is the GOAT, right? We can have that conversation about other players. I'm a respecter of Kobe, definitely a respecter of Magic, respecter of Kareem. Notice how I'm leaving a name out. Yes. But if we're honest, we're going to talk about the GOAT. And so in keeping with that, I'm thinking, what is a GOAT fragrance? Now, we could still have the conversation because there are still some fragrances that we could go back and forth as far as, yeah, this one is a GOAT, this one's a GOAT. But as far as what I have in my collection, if I'm going to say a fragrance that I can point to and say, yeah, that's going to be considered a GOAT fragrance, right? Because when I'm thinking about this fragrance, it is one, extremely versatile. It does what it needs to do, but also just as far as the love that we and fragrance seem to have for it, and just kind of like it's a standard, right? It is one of those fragrances that it's like, it's a standard. It's not going anywhere. It's not like anybody's going to be like, no. Now, you may want to change or move away from the profile just because it is such a nice, appealing, and just common type of a fragrance. But I'm talking about from Chanel. This is Bleu de Chanel, and this is the parfum. And this is what we're going to say. Yes, this would be considered one of those GOAT fragrances. Now, yes, you can make the argument for Creed, Aventus. You can make your argument for a couple other things. Sauvage, of course, because Sauvage is just like everybody got Sauvage. But when I'm thinking about a GOAT fragrance, and really just even with this level of sophistication that Chicago has, the level of sophistication that this has, Bleu de Chanel Parfum is definitely going to be kind of my fragrance that I would put up as a GOAT fragrance to, again, represent the city of Chicago. That basically was the place where the greatest of all time basketball player played. All right. And again, we can argue about it. You probably have a better time arguing and convincing your cousin's baby sister, uncle, whatever it might be. Yeah. All right. But again, Bleu de Chanel by Chanel. And this, again, is the parfum version. All right. But I'm going to give an honorable mention to a couple of cities that, I'm going to give honorable mention, of course, to the city I live in, and then to a city that also kind of helped formulate some things within me. So I lived in Atlanta for a couple of years while I was going to school, went to one of the HBCUs there. And so Atlanta, first of all, I don't like Atlanta's traffic. I don't have anything that represents the traffic that I hate there. So yes, but Atlanta also has like they have like 30 streets named Peach something. Like there's Peachtree Boulevard, Peachtree Avenue, Peachtree Lane, Peachtree Street, Peachtree Circle. It's like, okay, y'all, we get it. Georgia Peach, we get it. So, but if I'm thinking about a fragrance that can help me to represent the city of Atlanta, we're going to go with, from Argos, we're going to go with Triumph of Bacchus, just because that peach note is up there. Nice, of course, with the tobacco and everything of that nature. And I think Georgia is a place for tobacco as well. So yeah, that would be a perfect mashup, as it were. But definitely one of my favorite fragrances. Definitely a fragrance that just the peach, the tobacco. I think there's rum in this as well. Yeah, this, we're talking Atlanta, and if we're honest, if you know Atlanta, this probably feels at home in Atlanta. This probably just feels like Atlanta. I think right now, last time I went, it was like Baccarat Rouge was all over the place. But if they knew about Argos, I think this would be all over the place too. But we're talking again, Triumph of Bacchus from the House of Argos. And now to the city where I currently live, the place where I lay my head, and I have been laying my head for the past 10, 12 years or so. The city that I don't see myself leaving unless there's something really drastic. This is home for me now. This is a place where my wife and I, we've built our house. We're good here. There's no reason really for us to go anywhere else at this point. But that could change or shift, right? But when I think about Phoenix, Phoenix is kind of a melting pot city in that there's a lot of folks that are transplanting here. There's a lot of things happening here. But we're in the desert. We're literally in the desert, right? My backyard, there's no grass. We don't do grass here. There's nothing for me to mow because it's dry. There's no grass. When there is rain, it's very sporadic. Or if it rains really hard and fast, for a couple of days. And then after that, you will go like another 8-9 months without any rain, right? So I figured it's definitely appropriate to talk about the fragrance. If you kind of know, because of what I've been saying. I'm talking about from the house of Day 3. This is Desert Rain. And this was definitely be included because first of all, Day 3 is in the valley. Day 3, their boutique is in an area called Queen Creek. So it's, just a little outside of the Phoenix, outside of Phoenix, but it's still part of the Phoenix metro area. For where I live, it's probably about 30 to 35 minutes by car using the highway. But they captured the rain in the desert smell. They did a great job of it. They captured that smell. And this is, to me, this is evocative. This is definitely a fragrance that feels like Phoenix from that aspect. There's a few other things that we could have talked about as far as the culture, as far as the Hispanic culture and the foods and things of that nature. We could have done that. We could have talked about even some of the nightlife here and things of that nature because we've got Scottsdale and all of that. So, but if I'm thinking iconic as far as Phoenix, I think this is a fragrance that definitely fits it and definitely works very well. So again, from the house of Day 3, this is Desert Rain. And that concludes the journey of our travel through cities. I think I represented my city as far as Chicago very well, and then gave honorable mentions, nods to the cities that kind of helped shape some things within me. All right. But it's now your turn. Give me in the comments what city you're from, and a fragrance or two that would represent your city. And tell us why. Put that in the comments. Definitely love to hear that. And if I know your city, I'll be like, yeah, that you're right. You're absolutely right. But if I don't know your city, it'll be, nice to kind of know and hear. And then as far as other creators to tag, I know just off the top of my head, because I didn't prepare this beforehand, I know Meech tagged a few of the ones that I'm already, that I would tag, if it were just me coming up with it. But I think Sense IRL is another one in there that I'll go ahead and make sure it's tagged. Layered by Sense is another one. And I'm trying to think who else. But if I don't call your name, it's okay. Tag yourself. Go ahead and tag yourself in. And go ahead and drop your video, drop your content so we can see what's going on in your city. All right. That's it for this one. Do me a favor, of course, stay safe, stay sane, stay smelling good. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, request notification, share, check out the video that's right there. And then we'll see you next video. Have a great one. Be blessed. Peace, y'all.